Can you get my makeup brushes? I forgot them.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Where are they?
On my makeup table. Where fucking else would they be?
I don't know. Do I do my makeup on that table?
You walk past it like a million times a day. Hello everyone. My name is B Carter and welcome to my channel. Look, you need to prepare yourself for this one. Thanks. It's the boy. You know the camera's on.
Is it?
Yeah.
Cool.
Look, we live with the choices we made, including the choices we made to marry. Hello, my fellow quarantiners. No, not really. We're not quarantined yet. We're not right now anyway. By the time this video comes out, we probably will be. But we're not right now. We're just like advised to stay at home. Which is cool, because I'm all for working from home. Because I don't have to wear pants. You guys are going to have to strap in, grab an adult beverage, because this story, it took me so long to research it. And I've got like 6 pages of notes, and then I've got my laptop over here because I'm kind of cross-referencing everything. There's so many different like resources and stuff on it. And it was so hard to because so many of them are written differently, not in timelines, and so it was so hard to match everything. And I tried to go in date order of what happened, but then a lot of the stuff had normal stuff, and then they just have all of the articles about his crimes that fitted in between that. Look, I'm rambling. Let's just do this. I decided, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna do my makeup and do this because this is long and I need something to do with my hands, or okay. Starts out all hunky-dory. This story is about a man named Albert Fish. So Fish was the youngest of 4 living children, which I'm assuming means there was some mishaps. Babe! Can you get my makeup brushes? I forgot them.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Where are they?
On my makeup table. Where fucking else would they be?
I don't know. Do I do my makeup on that table?
You walk past it like a million times a day. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Love you.
Yeah, you did.
Ah. He doesn't believe me. He was the youngest of 4 living children to his parents. His dad, this was some cradle snatching shit, this was. His dad was 75 and his mum was 32. So, as a child, he basically decided that he wanted to go by the name Albert after one of his dead siblings. I don't know if that's weird or not. I can't decide. He wanted to go by Albert after one of his dead siblings, and also because he used to get called ham and eggs by kids in an orphanage, which we'll get into in a minute. And so he wanted to go by Albert so that he would stop getting teased. So when his dad Randall was 75 when he was born, and his mum was only 32. So, I mean, it's not too much of a shocker that Randall, good old Randall, passed away of old age. I think it was a heart attack, when Fish was 5. So when that happened, basically Ellen, his mum, put all of her kids into an orphanage, basically kind of while she got her shit together because she couldn't afford to look after them. So him and his siblings and everybody at the foster home basically all did suffer physical abuse at the hands of their carers. Albert, however, figured out that he quite enjoyed the physical pain. I mean, we all got kinks, I guess, but to find your kink at that age, he figured out he was into pain. He enjoyed it somewhat. His mum came and got them when there's a lot of conflicting things. He basically says that like she came and got him in 1880, which would have made him 10. But then there was another one that said that he was 8 when she picked him up. But then there was a quote from him and it said, "I was there till I was nearly 9," which means he would have been 8. But that would never lined up with 1880. So look, I mean, I don't think that we can really rely on record keeping from back then. We can barely rely on fucking record keeping from now. So he basically said, "I was there till I was nearly 9, and that's where I got started wrong. We were unmercifully whipped. I saw boys doing things they should not have done." So at age 12 in 1882, he began a relationship with a telegraph boy. I actually had to look up what a telegraph boy was because we ain't the 1800s anymore. So a telegraph boy was basically a young boy, like anywhere between like adolescence and almost adulthood, and they would carry telegrams on bicycles, basically. So basically this boy introduced him to, I can't say these words, okay, urologia and coprophagia, which is basically drinking your pee, eating your shit. That's what those words mean, which is just so nasty. So we're going to skip ahead just a touch to when Fish was 20 years old. He moved to New York on his lonesome by himself, where he worked as a prostitute. Now, see, but then in 1898, he had to go and work as a painter because Mummy Dearest arranged a marriage for him, which was cool. I mean, it was like 1898. Like, it was normal for Mumsy to interfere like that. Like, it's just the way it was. Her name was Anna Mary Hoffman. She was actually 9 years younger than him, and they ended up having 6 children. Their names were listed, and they were a part of, like, the interrogation and all that sort of stuff, but I'm not going to say anything about them. They had 6 kids, which was, you know, all good, happy marriage, well. So after he was arrested, so most of this information came out after he was arrested. So there's really, I tried to like order it in date order, rather than like his life, because I didn't really want to do that. So apparently in 1903, he was arrested for grand larceny and he was sentenced and convicted and sent to Sing Sing. But there was no information on what exactly he had done or how long he was in there for. All I can really tell you is that he was definitely out by 1910 because that's when he like upped his game. And when he was a prostitute, he actually did start having his way with young boys, which is nasty enough, but you know. In 1903, he was arrested for grand larceny. Again, I don't really know what happened. There was not really anything about what happened. But he was convicted and jailed in Sing Sing. He obviously had got out by 1910 and went back to his family. There isn't really much about what his wife was doing at this time, or like when they moved to places that they moved to and stuff, because these crimes all happened in kind of different places and it doesn't really say how he made that work. So throughout his marriage, he did continue to have his way with young boys while he was working as a painter, still. And one of his lovers, he did have his way with young boys, but he would also have like consensual lovers. And one of his lovers took him to a wax museum, and that's where, see, I didn't really understand this or how these two correlated, but that's where basically he says that he started getting really obsessed with sexual mutilation. And I honestly, I don't understand how a wax museum does that to someone. Like, how? So yeah, 1910, they were living in Wilmington, Delaware. And this is where he met a boy named Thomas Kedden. Thomas Kedden was a 19-year-old man, and basically Fish took him back to where he was staying, and then they started this, I can't say this word, which is why I have it written in big ass letters on my notes, because I don't know how to say it. Anyway, I don't know. So it's basically kind of like, it's unknown really whether Fish forced all of this stuff onto Thomas or whether he was a contributing party, but during his confession he did kind of imply that Thomas was intellectually not quite there. So like in this day and age he would have been deemed unable to consent anyway. So after he took him back to his place and forced this kind of like a relationship thing on him, he basically he took him back to this farmhouse after 10 days. He took him back to this farmhouse after 10 days, and that's where he started actually like torturing him, like just fucking torturing him. And he actually said that he wanted to kill him, but he thought it was too hot, and he thought that it might attract attention to him, which I'm assuming he means because of the smell, because they obviously didn't have fridges and freezers and stuff back then. I'm assuming that's what he means. Don't know. So yeah, he didn't end up doing that, and he tied him up and tied Thomas up, and cut half of his, the sausage from his sausage and beans. Yeah. Cut half of his sausage off, and then just kind of gave him a kiss. Left $10. $10 back then. I feel like $10 back then would have been a lot of money. Left $10, gave him a kiss, said goodbye, went home. So there is actually like a couple of quotes from Albert for this. And it says, "I shall never forget his scream or the look he gave me," which he's referring to like when he actually like cut his penis off, because obviously didn't give the dude anesthetic. And then he basically said he's like, "Took first train I could back home, never heard what became of him or tried to find out." Which obviously means like they didn't even try. I did find this one source that said it was reported, but it was, from what I could tell, it was reported in a newspaper. And they actually misspelt his name, so they put it as Thomas Bedden instead of Thomas Kedden. And obviously there's no such person as Thomas Bedden. And I don't really know how reporting it in a newspaper or the newspaper spelling it wrong has anything to do with anything. But like, this is the early 1900s, and I don't know. He's getting old by this point too. You think about it, this is 1910 and he was born in 1890. He was born in 1870, and this is when he's 40 years old this is happening. So he took a long time to get his shit, anyway, that's not the point. Again, not the point. Not the point. I want to do what I did last time because I really liked it, but at the same time I'm kind of like, why would you do the same thing twice, you moron? Should we do some purple and red? I think so. So, I don't have any lashes today either. That's a bit depressing, isn't it? Isn't it? So in 1917, Fisher's wife left him. Shocker. Didn't possibly see that shit coming. So Fisher's wife left him, and she basically, she took all of their furnishings, and Fish says that she actually took, everything that they owned as a family, and she bolted with someone that used to board with them named John Strube. I think that's how you say it. Named John Strube, and they basically bolted while Fish was at work. And get this though, right? They didn't take the kids. They left all 6 children in a house with Fish, and there wasn't any reports, or the kids never said anything about, the kids were involved in the questioning and stuff, but they never said anything about, they was like, no, he didn't do anything to us, but we knew he never did anything to us. There was no abuse or anything to them. So I mean, that's something. But yeah, so she and this boarder fucking ran off into the sunset together with everything the family owned while everyone else was out, and just left him there with the kids in an empty house. There was a report where she did come back, like her and Jono, came back and begged for somewhere to stay. Fish, obviously, he let her back and he was like, yeah, you can come back, you can stay, but he cannot and will not be in my house. They agreed, which is fishy, right? But it didn't take Fish very long to realise that Jono was actually living in the attic. And she was like sneaking food to him and like, anyway, so she kicked them out again, and he was basically like, you can stay, he goes, and they both fled again. But this is kind of the time where he started to really show the nuts, the nutsy bit, you know. And this is about this. So that was like the start of his auditory hallucinations, and then this is also around the kind of part where he started to self-harm. So basically he did it for pleasure, is my point. It wasn't about hurting himself. He was doing it for pleasure. So when he was arrested, they took an X-ray of his pelvis, and there was 29 needles inserted into his pelvis. And he also used to have a nail-studded paddle, which he would like hit himself with. Yep. And he also inserted wool, like soaked in lighter fluid, and then he would light it into his anus, and he would light it on fire. Like, I'm not about kink shaming anyone, but that's dedication to a kink. That is so much dedication. He was starting to get really into cannibalism, and he did actually write a story. He wrote a letter. Yeah, so in one of his murders, he actually sent a letter to the little girl's mum. We're going to get into that. But basically in this letter, he says that he had a friend who was basically kind of shipwrecked in China because their boat got stolen. And it was basically like a famine. And so they would have all of the kids who were 12 and under sold off so that they could eat them, basically. And they were killed and put into butcher shops. And that's why people would have their meat. So this guy that he knew used to, like, obviously acquired quite a taste for human flesh because he was shipwrecked in China, and that was the only meat that they had. And so when he came back, he lived quite close to Albert Fish. And he would tell him about it all the time and how good human flesh was and stuff. And then he kind of like was like, yep, I want to try it. So when he was developing his cannibalism, he would just kind of eat raw meat. I started to get a little bit vague with the parts that aren't important because this is so long. So there was a failed abduction in 1924 of a girl named Beatrice Keel. She was playing and he tried to lure her away, but her mum like came out and scared him off. Her dad then later found him sleeping in their barn and also again scared him off. So he failed that abduction, but he was suffering from psychosis at the time, like by this point. So 1924, he would have been 54 years old. He was suffering from psychosis, and he was just like that weird old man that would mumble around the neighborhood by himself. And he genuinely thought that God was telling him to torture and mutilate children. So there was this little boy, there was this kid named Cyril Quinn. Nice kid, as far as I knew. He was getting taken advantage of by Fish for a while. It was a repeated occurrence. So Cyril Quinn was playing outside with one of his friends, and Fish came over and asked if they had lunch yet, and they were like, no. So he invited them to his apartment for sandwiches. And of course, because this was the early 1900s, that was perfectly normal, even though Cyril knew exactly what was going to happen when they got there. And he was just luring his friend in. This is, again, so weird. They were wrestling on Fish's bed, like play fighting while he made them sandwiches. And when they were doing that, they were wrestling a little too hard on the bed. And the bed kind of broke. And they saw what he calls, what Albert called his implements of hell, which was a knife, a hand saw, and meat cleaver. And basically, Fish decided he was going to test them on these two boys, but they found them and they just, fucking just bolted out of there. Like, no ma'am. Not today. Not today. Then there was, so again, these are ones that that was found out after he was arrested. Again in 1924, so that happened in 1924, this happened in 1924. 1924, Francis McDonald went missing. He was 9 years old. He was described by his friends to have been taken by an elderly man with a grey mustache. And he was later found hanging by a tree. He had been assaulted in a sexual nature, and was strangled by his suspenders. And that's actually how Fish got his name, the Grey Man. The next one was a 4-year-old Billy Gaffney. Yes, I said 4 years old. 4 years old. So this one was in 1927. I was playing with a 3-year-old and a 12-year-old friend or friends or whatever in an apartment building, and they were playing, and then the 12-year-old kind of left and then came back, and then when he came back, the 4-year-old and the 3-year-old were gone. 4-year-old being Billy. They were gone. The 3-year-old was later found on the roof, but Billy never to be found again, never to be seen again. When they asked the 3-year-old where he was, he basically turned around and said that the boogeyman took him, which is where he got the name boogeyman as well. And then there was someone named Joseph Meehan, who witnessed an elderly man with a young boy in a trolley manhandling him, and later identified that to be Fish and Billy Gaffney. There's a letter that just kind of makes me feel sick, that he wrote about what he did to Billy, and we're not going to go into it. It's extremely descriptive. If you want to read it, Google it. It's very easy to find. But honestly, it's just a whole lot of detail that nobody wants about a 4-year-old. It's sad enough that it fucking happened. We don't need to relive the details. Just know that he was, So he was murdered, he was cut up, and he was eaten. Which we're going to get into again with the next murder, which is the one that he got caught for. So I really don't want to go into detail. This dude wrote letters about this shit. He's messed up. So Elizabeth Gaffney, Mrs. Gaffney didn't actually believe that Fish killed her son. She tried to question him in prison about it, and he kind of just burst into tears and asked to be left alone. She kind of gave up after that, but remained unconvinced, apparently, according to this. Next is Grace Budd. Grace Budd was, poor little girl. She wasn't actually his intended victim. Her brother was. Her brother was 18 years old and had answered an ad for some work with Fish. Now, Fish, when he went to the family's home, introduced himself as Frank Howard. So this happened in 1928. And so the son answered this ad, and then Albert came over for lunch, to have lunch with the family, meet his parents and all that sort of stuff, because they were going to be going to wherever Albert was living at the time, which I'm assuming was probably still Delaware or somewhere. And basically he had all these plans, and then he had lunch with them, and Grace came out and had lunch with them as well, and he changed his mind. about who he was taking. So he was supposed to come back the next day and he didn't show up. And so he, sorry, my sister. And so he basically came back and he apologized, and he, apologized for not showing up and stuff, and said that he had a birthday party to go to, a children's birthday party to go to, and was wondering if he could take Grace, and then he would come back and get their son and they would go to do this job or whatever. They agreed, which is probably one of their biggest regrets, or their biggest regret. So they dressed her up in her Sunday best and they let her go, and they never saw her again, which sucks ass. And I mean, back then he just gave them a fake name and he was from out of town, and yeah, I don't know, that's horrible. Like, you wouldn't even know. Grace was never seen again. There was someone else, a 66-year-old superintendent, Charles Edward Pope. They arrested him as a suspect and he spent 108 days in jail because he was accused by his estranged wife as being the culprit. In November of 1934, now this is, 6 years later? November of 1934, an anonymous letter shows up to Grace Budd's mum. Mrs. Budd was illiterate and couldn't read, so she had her son read it to her. This is the letter that explains his friend from China, and the cannibalism and things like that. Again, I am not going to go into detail about what happened to her. If you want to know, you can read the letter yourself. But basically, she was not taken to a birthday party, obviously. They took her straight to this house, which I'll show somewhere. Straight to this abandoned house, like a farmhouse kind of thing. And he left her outside. She was picking wildflowers. He went inside and got ready. He called her in. She fought him off as best she could, and unfortunately it didn't work. She was not assaulted sexually though, but she was killed and eaten. And he says that it took him 9 days to eat her in her entirety. So he did say she died of it. That's good. I'm not going to say about that again. He actually says in the letter, he says, "I came to your house for lunch. Grace came out and she kissed me." So she kissed him on the cheek. Came out, sat on my lap and kissed me. I decided then that I was going to eat her. So the letter was basically his fucking undoing. It was like, he sent it from where he was staying at the time, which was, so it had an emblem with the letters NYPCBA, which was the New York Private Chauffeurs Benevolent Association. A janitor was staying there previously, and he said that he had left them in his old apartment before he moved out, and when they went to that apartment, the chick told him basically that Albert Fish checked out of the room a couple of days earlier. But she did say that Fish's son had sent him some money and she was holding on to it for him, so he was going to be back. So the lead investigator just kind of waited for him to show up. Fish, basically, he didn't even try to deny it either. Like, he was just like, I went there to kill Edward Budd, which was Grace's brother, but changed his mind, and it never even crossed his mind to her. But he later claimed that while kneeling on Grace's chest, he did have 2 involuntary ejaculations. See what I mean by needing my laptop for this shit? Like, I've got about 12 articles on this up currently, and it's just doing my head in. Anyway, so that's what happened. He was captured. Now, that's not all. So during his trial, he pled insanity, obviously. His kids, his stepkids, oh, that's right. Fuck, no, I missed a bunch. So then, in 1930, after he before he was arrested, so he's arrested in 1934. Before, he did actually get remarried in 1930, but he was only married to her for a week. So he had stepkids. And the stepkids did actually testify that he was insane, as did his kids. Like, they noticed some shit that was just not right. So they, basically all testified. They kind of testified that yes, he was insane, but he should probably be executed anyway. Like, just because he was a bad dude. He's a bad egg. Which is fine. He did end up being found sane and guilty, and he was executed. He arrived in prison in March of 1935, and he was executed by electric chair on January 16th of 1936. So 1936, 1924, he's 54, so he would have been 66. Yeah, 66 years old when he was executed. Dude didn't have that long left anyway. It was honestly. And then so you have like all of his victims. There was obviously a bunch of other victims throughout his entire life that just were never named or found, because this is all kind of stuff that he said he did. Like, basically when he got picked up for grace, he just confessed to everything else, you know. Not really sure how I feel about this colour, but we're going with it. So there was a bunch of suspected victims as well. There was Emma Richardson, who was 5 years old, and she was killed in 1926. Then there was Yetta, and I cannot pronounce her last name. She was 12, and she was murdered in 1927. And then there was Robin Jane Liu. She was murdered in 1931, and then there was a 16-year-old named Mary and a 17-year-old named Benjamin, who were both killed in 1932. They were also suspected to be Fisher's victims, but he never confessed to them, and they didn't have any proof technically. It was just, I think, like the similarity of crimes maybe, that made them think that. So yeah, they'll, you know. There was a final statement that he gave to his lawyer, James Dempsey, but he basically said, he's like, I'm never showing this to anyone. It is absolutely vile and disgusting, and the obscenities in it, he's like, I will never show it to anyone ever. It's fucking nasty. That's the thing. Honestly, this has drained me emotionally, on a lot of levels. So a documentary film. There was films made on his life. I don't even know anymore. My head is just dead. So, that's all I've got for you on Albert Fish. I'm really sorry that I got fucking all weirded out towards the end. It's just, honestly, this took me like a week to get my head around, and then when you kind of like re-say it out loud, so like I've got like 6 pages of notes, I've got my laptop open, I'm like trying to cross-reference, because just like writing it down was just not getting me anywhere. And then when I start to say it out loud again, like thinking that I've got it all in order, and I start to say it out loud again, and then I realize that I don't, and I'm kind of like, what was this dude fucking doing? Like, and I don't know how to feel about it. So it was a tough one. This one was tough. But thank you so much for watching and staying with me and experiencing this with me. I feel like we have bonded on an intimate level. And if everybody could just stop buying all the toilet paper, like my household is in a dire situation with that at the moment. That'd be lovely. Thank you so much for watching. If you could please subscribe, that would be fantastico. If you have any theories or any like comments about Albert Fish, if I missed anything, which I probably did because my camera cut out a few times and I didn't know where I was up to, by all means, like, I'm all for discussions and chatting and stuff. If there's anybody else in particular that you would like me to look into, please do let me know and I shall do that. But yeah, I'll see you next time.